Use the Groups tool to design special work areas where learners can discuss, share, and submit work as a group. This tutorial shows how to create groups in your course. The Groups tool allows you to create and edit groups and categories. Categories house collections of related groups. Groups subdivide the learners. To begin creating groups, from Manage Groups, click New Category. First, we will set up the category. Enter a name for the category. For this example, we will set up a category for a seminar presentation. Then, enter a description. Select from one of 6 group enrollment types, which define how learners are enrolled and how many groups are created. For this example, select Number of Groups Capacity of Number Self-Enrollment, which allows learners to enroll themselves into one of a predefined number of groups. We now need to specify the properties associated with the group enrollment type. For this example, we will create groups of 2 learners and 10 groups from which learners can choose. Then, enter a group prefix, which precedes the group number upon creation. For this example, we will use the prefix Seminar. Next, we will set the advanced properties. Click Set Self-Enrollment Expiry Date to set a due date for learners to enroll in a group. Select the date that the self-enrollment expires. If you want any remaining learners automatically enrolled in groups after the expiry date, click Allocate Unenrolled Users after self-enrollment expiry date. Next, we will specify the workspaces we want to associate with the group category. Workspaces can include discussion areas, lockers, and Dropbox folders. For this example, we want to set up discussion areas and Dropbox folders. When you are ready, click Save. You will now be prompted to set up the workspaces that you've selected. Select an existing or create a new forum that will house the topics, which will be restricted to you and the group members. For this example, we will select an existing forum. From the Forum menu, select Seminar Presentations. Then, click Create and Next to finish setting up the discussion topics. You will now be prompted to set up the Dropbox folders. Enter a name for the folder. If desired, select a category and select or create a new grade item to associate the folder with your gradebook. For this example, we will select an existing grade item. From the Grade Item menu, select Seminar Presentation. Next, define the out-of score. You can add a rubric to assist with grading the assignment, or instructions that the learner will see when viewing the Dropbox folder. For this example, add instructions for the learners so they know which files to submit for the assignment. Finally, you can decide whether the learner may add the folder to ePortfolio, add supporting content files, or define the submission options. When you are ready, click Create. Review your workplace summary, then click Done. Now that your workspaces are set up, you are returned to the category creation. Review the category and, when you are ready, click Save. You have now created a category for the seminar presentation with 10 groups, restricted group topics for private discussions, and Dropbox folders for submissions. Use the Groups tool to design special work areas where learners can discuss, share, and submit work as a group.